Welcome on in, football fans. It's your boy, Gsluke, here with a little Thursday night football preview for the DFS Showdown slate tonight between the Giants and the 49ers. Gonna bring you a little idea of what to expect, maybe some of the injury concerns, a few game scripts that you might want to consider playing, and of course, how to handle the game theory angle heading into some of your larger field GPPs. By the end, hopefully most of your questions about tonight's slate will be answered, and you'll be ready to go out there and build some lineups that hopefully find their way towards the top of some of those leaderboards. So with a lot to go through, let's go ahead and get this thing started. We've got our projections up here, and before we go player by player, let's just go over the general game script, which tonight is going to be extremely predictable. We've got a 10.5 point spread favoring the 49ers side, a relatively low scoring affair too. They're in the mid to low 40s, and on top of that, you've got a dominant 49ers side going against an extremely lackluster side on the Giants. I mean, first week got trounced by the Cowboys. Last week through the first two quarters was losing to one of, if not the worst team in all of the NFL. Did end up squeaking out the win, which was quite the feat out there for the Giants. Heck of a comeback. But early, against a team of an elite tier like the 49ers, we kind of know what to expect, right? We know Daniel Jones probably going to be playing from behind for most of, if not all of the game. On the other side, Brock Purdy, though it's not sexy, is going to go out there, probably have like 200, 250 yards, and that team is going to run the ball 30, maybe 35 times. If they can control the line of scrimmage, maybe they hold the ball even more. It gets closer to like 40, perhaps even 40 plus carries between CMC and Elijah Mitchell, but we know their identity. We've seen it over the first 2 weeks, frankly, over the last few years with that Kyle Shanahan-led offense. And the Giants, with so many moving pieces on offense and so many fringe options at wide receiver, are much more unpredictable, right? We don't know really what to expect. If they got ahead, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out there and run Breida into the ground. It's worth reminding you guys that Saquon Barkley is not going to be playing tonight. And on the other side, we have Brandon Aiyuk is questionable. Now, we'll get to Aiyuk here in just a few minutes. He's definitely a lot more live to play tonight, but Barkley's already been completely ruled out, which means that we have somebody like, obviously, Matt Breida that's going to be cheaper, that he probably should be at $7,000. But I don't know how much he's going to be used, right? If the Giants are playing from behind, the game script might make him a little bit less valuable than he would be in a competitive type of game. So this game tonight is going to be heavily impacted by script. And if you're going to take the 49ers side, which is of course going to be a little bit more popular in some of your GPPs, then you're going to have to find a way to get different, right? You can't go out there and just take all 4 or 5 chalky pieces for the 49ers and think that you can get away with that. We'll talk about a few ways to get different. We'll talk about a few of the specific game scripts, right, that favor certain types of players, and then how within that game script you can find some differentiation to the field. So for tonight, just for full transparency, full general standpoint here, I love the 49ers. I'm going to be playing a lot of 49er stacks, 4 2s, 5 1s in that direction. But like I said, just finding ways to be a little bit different about it. So up top, CMC, not somebody you're going to be able to get different with. He's going to be at least 80% owned across both positions over there for Showdown. It might even be closer to 85 to 90% in some of your smaller field or higher dollar contest. That's not a surprise. I don't think you have to fade CMC or get too cute tonight. I'm out there with one of the best, most predictable fantasy performers that we have in the entire league, especially if you think the 49ers are going to win this game. If they're playing from ahead, we know they're going to run the ball. And like I said, they're going to run it 30, 35 times, even in competitive games. And if they're playing from ahead, sometimes 40 plus times as a team. Now, not all the carries will go to CMC. On that team, you have a few other ball carriers that are going to get involved. Most notably, you have Elijah Mitchell down here. I think I called him Elijah Moore before. It's Elijah Mitchell there at $2,400. He's got a really low price tag. I've heard a few beat reporters say that he might get a little bit of a larger load tonight because of the fact that CMC's had so many carries over the first 2 weeks. Either way, expect a heavy dose of the run for the 49ers. So if you want to play both of them together, I think you could do that tonight, right? So that's why I brought up both running backs at the same time. And if you're going with any type of a heavy 49ers stack, I think you want to have at least one of those 2 running backs. Now, I might not have 100% exposure to a running back in 49ers kind of lineups, but it's going to be damn close to it, right? I mean, CMC is at 80% ownership for himself. So I could see an argument for going out there and just locking him. And then, of course, having a few lineups where you have CMC plus somebody like an Elijah Mitchell there. But if you're going to play any lineup without a CMC tonight, especially if it's a 49ers heavy lineup, it would be like a crime not to have Elijah Mitchell in there, right? If CMC is not going to be in the optimal, and it was expensive, what is he, like 13-2, and that's at the flex position, right? His, avenue to not getting there. I don't even know the right word for it. I was going to say like avenue to success. But the exact opposite of that is if Elijah Mitchell goes out there and steals all of his touchdowns, right? Steals the touches, ends up getting like 15 to 20 rushes tonight. And that's why you'd want to have him for sure if you're not playing a CMC. Over there on the Giants side, you've got like Daniel Jones. You have players like Darren Waller that I think have decent roles tonight. If you're going to play anyone at super high exposure on the Giants, I think it's a Waller, I think it's Breida, or of course a Daniel Jones. Anytime you have a quarterback that's reasonably priced, I'm going to be a huge advocate for playing them in a showdown format, pretty much regardless of the type of tournament you're playing in. If it's large field GPPs, cash especially, single entry, smaller field, you name it, Daniel Jones is almost a must play tonight. He brings rushing upside to the table in a script that favors the 49ers. We know that they're going to likely have to pass the ball even more than before. And you saw in that Cowboys game, right? Daniel Jones put up a respectable performance. A lot of that because of his rushing. Week 2, of course, I know it started out a little bit rough for him, but by the end of the week, had a pretty respectable performance when it came to his passing. Somebody that even in negative game scripts can post performances that you have to have in GPPs. And at 10-2, that's more than a fair enough price, right? He could be 11 grand, especially in a script where the Giants are going to be the favored team. So don't expect him to go out there, break the slate by any means. But I do like Daniel Jones tonight, and I'm probably going to have him in damn near every single lineup. I like Deebo Samuel over there from the 49ers, but if you're looking to get a little bit different tonight, and I promised you we'd talk about Brandon Aiyuk at some point, I think I might be with playing Aiyuk over the first few weeks, and frankly, towards the end of all of last season, there for the 49ers, Aiyuk was like the clear number one receiving threat now, right? Deebo's still going to get work as a running back. I'm going to get a lot of touches outside of just the traditional passing game. But when you're talking about down the field targets, right, splash plays, a lot of them are coming from Brandon Aiyuk, and certainly over the first 2 weeks that's been the case. Now, I was dealing with some sort of a shoulder injury. They did do a few scans. They made sure that it wasn't a broken clavicle or something of the sort. It wasn't. There's no structural damage from what they can tell, and I think he's going to play tonight. You can see I have him projected in at 12.9 points. Now, it's not like he's breaking the slate when it comes to the projection, but that's even with a limited workload, right? I've got him for 12.9 points. He's going to be extremely efficient. He has been extremely efficient for all of this season, and the price tag at $8,600 is incorporating the injury, right? Obviously, this projection too is incorporating the chance that he's going to have a slightly lower snap count, but when we see them in the red zone, when we see them in crunch time, third down situations, passing downs, let's say it's a little bit more of a competitive game, you're going to see a lot of Brandon Aiyuk. So if you're going to play a competitive game script, maybe a 3-3 between the Giants and the 49ers, I like somebody like Brandon Aiyuk even more, right? If they're going to be in a game that means a little bit more, I think that Brandon Aiyuk is going to see more playing time. So just a little mini correlation, a little sneaky play that you could get to, but even taking him at captain, right? You can see I've got him at 7.5% ownership right there. I'm at the captain slot. Worth noting, guys, that my player pool, of course, is posted over there on the Patreon page, but we do have our projected points and the projected ownership tabs on here for right now. These are my early Wednesday morning projections, so just know that they're going to change quite a bit throughout the day. So for the latest up-to-date projections, check out the Patreon. But as of right now, and we get the injury news, it's going to change, right? He's probably going to go up in ownership, right? If we get the confirmation that he's playing. I've only got him at 7.5%. That's a quarter of the ownership of a CMC. And I know CMC much more likely to be that top scorer, but it's $8,600 Brandon Aiyuk, right? He's, 12.9 there at the captain slot. And he could easily go for two touchdowns. We've seen him do that over the first 2 weeks. We've seen him go off, be that number one receiving threat. If this little shoulder injury is maybe a little bit of gamesmanship on this side of the 49ers, kind of like with Saquon, that, the Giants didn't roll him out until yesterday, even though he had no chance of playing this week. Maybe it's a little gamesmanship from, the 49ers, right? He's got no structural damage. He was out there practicing, albeit a little bit limited over the last 2 days. Maybe he's a little bit more healthy than they're leading on, right? It's a large field GPP. We've got to take chances at some point to go out there and have a week. And for me, Brandon Aiyuk, at least at lower ownership. We're going to have to see where it ends up at, right, by the end here, end of the day here on Thursday, I should say. These are my early Thursday projections, I should say. Got my days mixed up there. We'll have to see. Maybe he makes it into my player pool at a high rate. Going down to some of the mid-tier options, we talked about Waller, Burita. They're going to be decently popular. You can see both of them at like 20-25% at the flex spot. Captain spot, not a ton of exposure. You can see I've got Waller at 6%, Burita at just 3.2%. So I don't know if I'd love them at captain, but certainly as buybacks for some of your 49er stacks, could be that guy that you have to have. If you're going to go a little bit cheaper, I kind of prefer the kickers here more than anything. You have two offenses that have, I would say, inefficient quarterbacks in the red zone. Of course, Daniel Jones, not the brightest bulb when it comes to playing quarterback. And then they got a young Brock Purdy, right, who's been pretty good at protecting the football, but again, not like an offensive maestro, right? Not somebody we're expecting to go out there and have just, a masterclass performance at dicing apart the defense. Did that against the Steelers, right? Made them look like a really crappy defense. So he can do it. It's in his range of outcomes, right? But most games, Brock Purdy going to have like an above average performance. So these kickers are live, especially Jake Moody. That seems to be a really good kicker. Somebody that the 49ers invested a lot of draft capital into. So I think you could take a look at that as well. In terms of some of the cheaper wide receivers, 49ers, I think are a little bit of a better spot than the Giants, just because it's not as spread out, right? You have Jawan Jennings. We know he's going to get some sort of playing time. You got Ronnie Bell down here, who we know he's actually going to have some sort of a rollout there. You can see I've only got him projected for 0.9 points, but it's at least something. We know he's going to get some playing time. Same thing with Ray McLeod, right? It'll be on special teams. Maybe he gets a few snaps out there with the offense. Ross Dwelly, third string tight end. Actually, I think he might even be the second string tight end. Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback, right? We know he might get some time out there, scores touchdowns from time to time. On the Giants side, there's a million different bodies. We've got Wan'Dale Robinson probably coming back. I'm waiting for confirmation there, not projecting him in as of right now, but he could be another body to have to worry about. Let's see, Lawrence Cager, backup tight end. You've got Daniel Bellinger. Actually, Cager's your third string tight end. Bellinger's technically your backup. Cager a little bit more of a receiving threat than Bellinger, but Bellinger plays more, right, because he does all the blocking for them. But you've got Sterling Shepard. You've got Paris Campbell. You've got Gary Brightwell, backup running back for the Giants. Jalen Hyatt. You've got Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, Darren Waller, right? Matt Burita that we were talking about before. Just a million different people to worry about. And without Saquon Barkley, I think they're going to pass more. Because don't get me wrong, I still love Daniel Jones. It's just like, who's going to get all the targets? And you could play the game of trying to guess who that guy is going to be that scores the touchdown. But unless one of them scores 2 touchdowns, I don't think you're going to have him at captain, right? I mean, that could happen. Don't get me wrong. That's more than possible out there tonight. I just don't think it's very likely. And outside of the guy that maybe scores the 1 touchdown and has like 50, 60 yards, I don't know how many of them you're going to have, right? 1, maybe 2 in your lineup. So that's why tonight I think the 49ers, much more predictable side, much more concentrated offense, the side that I'm probably going to focus on a little bit more. But your GPP is going to be won or lost by which Giants players that you're taking, right? Is it Jalen Hyatt? Is it Darius Slayton? Is it Paris Campbell? I mean, there's just so many of these fringe wide receiver options that you could take for the Giants side that it gets a little bit tough out there. So, of course, I haven't made all of my determinations yet. I do kind of like Paris Campbell. He's gotten quite a few targets over the first few weeks. He's also, I think, the best player after the catch. So if we need somebody to create something, I think Campbell can do it for himself. So I like that for him. I like Jalen Hyatt, right? The unknown with a rookie, a player that should be getting better as the weeks go on. And then outside of that, I mean, if you're going to go super cheap, maybe it is a Cager. I mean, he might not even be active for tonight, right? We're going to have to double check on that later on. But like if he is, he's more of a receiving threat than Bellinger. Bellinger is just kind of like that blocking stiff out there, but he could score that 1-yard touchdown. Like I said, I think the 49ers side has some better options if you're going to really go down there cheap. Kyle Juszczyk, $400. Like I said, Ray McLeod, Ross Dwelly, all guys that are going to see snaps and are playing for the better offense with a higher implied team total. So for the slate tonight, just find ways to get different. In terms of game script, we talked about potentially Brandon Aiyuk being a little bit more competitive, or I should say a little bit better in competitive game scripts. But down low is where you're really going to have to make your stands, right? If you're going to go out there, differentiate with your lineup, leave some salary on the table. That's always a good idea, especially for some of the larger field GPPs. But if you're taking a Paris Campbell as one of your buybacks, and you're trying to find your last man in, right? Maybe he's your first player from the Giants, and you have like $2,000 remaining, let's say, rather than going up here and taking a Sterling Shepard, right? That would be leaving $1,000 on the table. I would really challenge you guys tonight to go down there and take like a Cager or take Wan'Dale Robinson at the pure minimum at $2,000 to like leave even more salary on the table. Everyone is going to play the 49ers stack, right? So if it's a 4-2, right, make one of your options like a Wan'Dale Robinson or a Cager if he's playing. Outside of that, for the Giants side, there's not much to work with, right? So you're going to have to force in some really ugly builds tonight. And maybe it is a use check, right? I think he's going to be a really good source of potential leverage you can get to. This less than $1,000 range is going to be extremely useful. And it would not surprise me to see a touchdown from there. And, you can go a little bit more expensive. You're going to see higher ownership numbers, though. Elijah Mitchell, you're going to see in quite a few of my lineups tonight. But that's not going to be any source of leverage, right? He's nearly 20% owned at the flex spot. I think that ownership is probably going to go up as the day goes on. The unfortunate part about taking the Elijah Mitchells, I talked about the kickers, and they're getting some ownership there too, is that they're not that differentiation. So I'm going to mix in these kickers. I'm going to mix in the Elijah Mitchells. But these guys down low are where you're going to win or lose the GPP. You're going to have to mix in the right ones. You're going to have to do it based on game script. And, just to give you a few ideas, right? Like, Kyle Juszczyk, I really like in competitive game scripts. Like, his upside comes from catching touchdowns. He doesn't usually score rushing touchdowns for the 49ers. He does from time to time, but it's usually those, PPR yards that mean a lot to Kyle Juszczyk, especially at like $400. I would say like a Dwelly's the same thing, right? He needs that like 1 yard touchdown. Whereas a Wan'Dale Robinson, you could play in any kind of game script, right? So, like, make sure you're using these players down low a little bit better. Obviously, if you're playing the 49ers side, the Giants are going to throw the ball downfield a little bit more. I think Wan'Dale Robinson's an even more intriguing option, right, in those kind of scripts. So, just have a, outcome in mind, right? Whether it's the 49ers winning by a lot, maybe it's the Giants somehow pulling off the upset, just competitive game script, you name it. Have something in mind when you're building your lineup, and make sure your lineup is themed around that. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the Thursday Night Football preview. Before you hop out of here, go ahead, smash that like button for me, and also comment down below your top captain play of the night, whether it's somebody that's a little bit more chalky like a CMC, or potentially a piece of leverage like a Brandon Aiyuk. Go ahead, let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and just to give you guys my take on that, I think it's got to be Brandon Aiyuk, right? If you're looking for like the game theory pivot, the player that might be way lower owned than he should be tonight, I think it might be Aiyuk because of the injury concerns. So we'll have to see if we get a report on his snap load or expected, playing time out there tonight. I'm going to be really intrigued to hear about that. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and let's go out there and have ourselves a night. Until next time, best of luck out there with those lineups. Any bets you're placing for tonight, whether it's on the prop side, underdog, prize picks, all that sort of fun stuff. For access to my player pool, any of the prop slips that I'm entering tonight, make sure to check out the Patreon as per usual. But I appreciate the support here on the channel. Appreciate all of the comments, likes, all the people subscribing to the Patreon, making sure the channel has all the support that it needs out there. It helps me do this for a living, and I appreciate all of you guys for that. So until next time, best of luck out there, and I'll see you guys for the main slate this weekend.